Hello everybody. This is another video on how to structure your dissertation for your psychology study or maybe for your PhD or for your undergraduate thesis. So today we are going to talk about the results section. Now every project is different, and of course I cannot tell you what sort of analyses you will have to report in your results section. That's not what this video is about. It's more about the things that I think professors and markers look at when looking at your results section. So here we go. I just take an example here. My favorite word processor, LibreOffice Writer, but of course you will probably work with Microsoft Word. That's the most commonly used one. Now the first point here in the results section is, that I would say, that I always notice, is that students typically do not follow the APA guidelines on reporting statistics. And I just mean very basic things, such as reporting the p-value. When you report, and this, maybe you already know this, but when you're, many or maybe most students do this wrong. So when you report a p-value, right? So if you say, for example, if you do gender differences, men scored lower on the conscientiousness measure, whatever that is, right? So then you would have, maybe you're probably reported with a t-test, and then you might, I just make up some numbers here, but say the t-test has, I don't know how many participants you have, but you have degrees of freedom in brackets, you have a certain value, and you have a p-value. And many students actually will report it like something like this. Or maybe even different. They might say, like something like this. Now this is wrong, okay? So this is wrong. This is the wrong way to do it. So what's wrong here? Well, first of all, p-values should be recorded. Just report like that. You don't need to say that it is smaller than 0.05. Second of all, there should not be a leading zero. And the other thing is that what I always say, statistical letters should be in italics. Is what I'm doing now. So notice that, right? So we have here this sort of like statistical bit. And that's the same, for whether you have an F test, right? In ANOVAs, the F should be a capital in italics. That's quite important. Oh, wait, is it really important? I mean, I don't think markers necessarily subtract points for that. That would be a little bit harsh, but it's something, it is a little detail, and it just makes your work look better because it shows that you really gave attention to detail. And I think that is something that we certainly appreciate when we're marking. And this video is also about how can you do better, right? Oh, by the way, don't highlight it in yellow when you write it. I just did that here for the example. So that's one thing to look for. So that is the reporting. Now there are lots of websites where you can look up APA statistical reporting. That's the American Psychological Association. So that's one thing to look for. Then another thing to look for is when you report your data and you work, for example, with SPSS, do not simply copy and paste tables or figures from SPSS. You can, of course, but there are a couple of problems with that. So one is that you often have a lot of maybe redundant information that's not really important, that's in that SPSS output table that you don't need to report. So that is an issue. And another issue is that you could argue, well, if you just copy and paste from SPSS, the marker might say, okay, well, so the student just copied and pasted it, so they didn't take the time to really refine it and adjust it to sort of like the style of the dissertation. Right, so that is a point where, and that's I think you see it sometimes that students copy and paste from SPSS. So if you, I mean, it's not necessarily wrong, but you can get a better grade if you put some attention to detail in creating nice tables and figures. Another issue actually that I often see is that it's about how you refer to tables and figures. So here I give you an example. So for example, a student might write something like this in the results section. They say, in the graph below, I illustrate this effect figure or graph 1. Well, now first of all, I think I wouldn't call it graph, but I would call it figure maybe. That's what I recommend. But also this is very has a lot of redundant language, right? So you see here a graph, you illustrate something, and then you repeat again. Now this is sort of like maybe a little bit an exaggeration, but just what you can do, actually, what's quite good is if you show this effect in figure 1, all you need to do is here at the end of the line in brackets you say figure 1. And then people know, oh, in figure 1 there will be some sort of like bar plot or some other sort of plot, a box plot or whatever, to show that. In the figure, what I also think is quite nice, if you have then a figure, have a figure caption. So how do you write a good figure? Imagine there is a figure here. So let's, and then you have a caption. I usually indent, and then I would say figure 1. You know, like conscientious. You can say sex differences in conscientiousness. And then you can add some additional text. You know, you don't need to necessarily, so it's actually quite common that people have just short and that people will figure out looking at a table what they see. But if you have a more complex figure or table, you can add some text in which you explain in 1 or 2 sentences what the reader should look at in that figure. I mean, I think that is also, again, is attention to detail. You know, we see students who do not have a caption at all underneath their figures. But having a figure, by the way, even if you don't necessarily need to, I mean, if you add a figure, you show to the person who marks your dissertation a specific skill. You say, I can do this. I know how to make a good presentation, or I know how to make a table. So I think personally it's quite nice to do. Even if it's not 100% necessary, it shows a skill. And for a dissertation, it's very much about you showing, you demonstrating the skills that you have acquired in your course, or that you maybe already had before. So that about figures and tables. Now, make sure that results are in the results section. So what I also see sometimes is that when students have, like, say, after that, right, so you have the discussion section that follows the results section, and this video is not really about the discussion, but I just still say it. Sometimes what students do, they start repeating things like this line. They say, well, we found that, so in this study we found that men were slower, men were less conscientious than women, right? So that actually is, you know, there are studies that show that, by the way. And then they repeat, and then they would repeat this, for example, in the discussion. Never do that, right? So that's not done. And actually, and that, unless it is a very important key number that you want to mention in the discussion, I think it's okay, but don't go with all the statistical details. The results section is for all the statistical details. Do not put such statistical details apart from maybe a key statistic such as the number of participants. Do not go into the exact fine-grained statistical details in the abstract either. It shouldn't be there. And that's sort of like what I want to say about the results section. Also, make sure you have still clear paragraphs in your results section. It should still be even though you have lots of numbers in there, it still should be really readable. So you can say first. So if I, for example, would do this, you can start like that, but you could also, and I personally actually I like it if you say first. First, we analyzed. Well, if you're in Britain, you would like to click this, right? I have it on British spelling currently. We analyzed sex differences using a t-test or something like that. You can have some introduction where you say what you do. Alternatively, you could details about the analysis could be in the analysis section of your methods. Now that is a little bit a personal choice that you can make, but I think what you really need to think about when writing the results section is, can the reader follow what I'm writing here? That is a key thing, right? Are people able to understand it? So it is not just dumping your findings in the results section, where you just dump them in and think, oh well, the person who marks this will figure it out themselves. They see that I have done it. No, that's not how you get extra points, like that you want for a good grade, for a good mark, as we call it in the UK. So make sure it is a readable text. Do not put in too many conclusions either. So you do not need to say here, well, you shouldn't, I think. You should not now write down this finding matched the earlier research by, whatever, Roberts from 2014. I just make this up, and confirmed and confirmed the, whatever, the long-standing theory. I mean, that sort of stuff should be in the discussion. So here it is really focusing on the actual findings. So you need to, that is the thing I think with scientific writing, and especially with these dissertations, that every section has its own specific purpose. And there are specific rules on how to format it, and you need to follow those rules in order to get a good grade. Well, I hope that helps. I mean, it was really short and simple, because of course there are different. Some results sections are very short, some are very long. It all depends on the data that you want to analyze. If it is, if you have different studies, of course, you would have a different results section for different experiments, as is common especially in cognitive psychology or in all areas of psychology. If you have a paper, for example, you have study 1, study 2, study 3, and each of these studies has their own methods and results section. Right. Now, if you have any questions about this, leave something in the comments. Also, if you like it or not. If you like this video, if you think it's helpful, please like and also subscribe to this channel. We have lots of videos for people who use SciToolkit, or in general, if you're a psychology student, of course, who has to write a dissertation. And that's it. Thank you for watching.